Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Tisa Murdock, and I'm the Director of End User Computing Solutions at VMware. And today's session is going to be about healthcare and how we can improve point of care and build solutions for the next generation clinical desktop. I'm really excited today because I have a great panel with me. We do this session every year at VMworld, and consistently the feedback has been we want to hear more from the customers, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. So for the format today, we're going to do a little bit more deeper dive into the solutions from each of our panel members. And I'd like to introduce them now, starting from, left to right. We have Mr. Justin Beardsmore from St. George Trust. He's the IT Infrastructure Manager. Welcome, Justin. We also have Mr. Darren Henderson, and Darren's from Southeastern Health, ICT Operations Manager. Welcome, Darren. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Martin Powis, and Martin is from Yorkshire, Humber, and he's the Enterprise Architect. So I just wanted to start off today by just taking a few minutes and talking about some healthcare trends. Healthcare continues to go through an amazing transformation, and we completely understand that you have a lot on your plate. There's a lot going on. So what happens is that you have to be very selective on the projects that you can take on from IT. They have to be projects that are either going to improve patient outcomes or they're going to improve the workflow of the clinicians. They're projects that are going to make a difference. And we know that as the whole industry moved from paper-based records to EMR, or electronic medical records, that was a huge shift. But I think what's interesting is most people didn't realize that they many times doubled or tripled the number of desktop devices that they had out on the hospital floor. Because if you think about it, you needed to make it really easy and really fast for your clinicians, your consultants, and your nurses to be able to access information or enter information. And if those clients that are out on the hospital floor happen to be fully loaded clients, we know that was really hard to manage and really taxed an already overstressed IT staff. It was really hard to maintain those endpoints. It was expensive, hard to manage, but I think most importantly, it was really hard to provide any level of service in that type of model. Now, we also know that the new consultant, the new physicians that are entering the workforce are used to this very much consumer experience. They're used to technology just working. And we know that physicians love technology, but in many times, they don't care what the underlying solution is. All they care about is that it works when and where they need it to work. It needs to be fast. It needs to be efficient. It's a very transactional workflow as they move around the hospital from room to room and ward to ward. They want their clinical workspace to follow with them. And we also know that there's a lot of new applications that are entering into the healthcare space, but let's face it, we also know that there's a lot of legacy applications that are in healthcare, and there's a lot of applications that aren't going away for a long time. So what that means is it ends up being a very complex environment that IT needs to manage. Now, what we're also seeing is this idea of engaging the patient earlier and often in their treatment plan. We've seen some new research lately that shows there's better outcomes when you engage the patient, when the physician or the consultant talks to the patient, understands their lifestyle, understands their socioeconomic background, gets them involved, invested in their treatment. Many times that yields better outcomes. And that makes sense if you think about it because you don't want to be in a silo when you're making these treatment decisions. You want to engage with your patient. And we also see this new trend where a lot of hospitals are giving patients devices so that they can read about what their condition is. They can have them sign off. They can get their buy-in that they're going to follow this protocol to treat them and hopefully make them better. And they're finding by doing that, it's reducing admissions. And then finally, if we're going to follow this model, and if this model continues, that's going to put another burden on IT because now they have to manage these devices that they're giving to patients. So what we find is that when we build a solution, and that's what my group does at VMware, is that we build solutions. We talk to customers, we talk to partners, we talk to software technology providers, we talk to integrators, and we work together to create a solution that's going to solve these challenges. And we knew that the solution had to become the consultant's best friend. whatever solution we brought to market couldn't impede the workflow. It had to make it better. It had to make it dead easy for them to get to their applications and their data. And so we developed this solution in conjunction with our partners, and it's all about how do we solve the issues that we typically saw with a fully loaded client environment. How do we make it more mobile? How do we make it more available? How do we increase security and do it in a way where it doesn't impede that workflow? Because when I talk to customers and I ask them, what's the most important thing to you? And I'll put those on the board: mobility, availability, security, and improving the workflow. And 99% of them say it's about improving the workflow. So to that end, we worked with our partners and we developed our very first solution about 2.5 years ago called VMware Always On Point of Care. And this solution was designed for just that. It's designed to make it dead easy and fast for clinicians to access their patient care applications. It provides the security that's required from an IT perspective, but it takes care of that for the clinicians so that they don't have to worry about that and they can get back to what they do best, treating patients. We're also seeing customers now looking at some of the new 3D options. They want to provide better clinical imaging, so we're adding NVIDIA cards to our solution. I want to make sure I mention Imprivata. Imprivata has been our partner for over 6 years in this solution, and the value that they bring is pretty simple. From the VMware point of view, we provide single sign-on to the desktop, but clinicians or consultants could care less about single sign-on to the desktop. They want single sign-on all the way through to their applications. They don't want to have to stop and think, what's my password, as they're treating a patient. So I want to make sure I mention them as well. And then finally, AirWatch. We're seeing a lot of value with the recent acquisition that VMware made with AirWatch. As applications get rewritten for mobile, maybe it's not a desktop anymore. Maybe it's just about delivering the applications. So we're starting to see more of our customers start with AirWatch for simple device management, but then there's a lot of other value that AirWatch can bring. Sharing content securely. That's a next big issue for healthcare. Now with that, I would like to start with our first panelist, and Justin's going to come up and talk to us about what he's been doing at St. George. Justin?
Thank you, Tisa. Okay, apologies to everybody who saw this slide yesterday, but it's kind of an important slide because it sets up the what we're trying to achieve. So, St George's Healthcare Trust is the largest healthcare provider in South West London. We're based on one large acute site, which is 35 acres, South West London. I'm told it's the biggest single-site hospital in London. There are bigger providers, but we all consolidate on one site. Sharing that site is the University of London Medical School, St George's. So kind of there's a theme running through kind of this presentation about shared working, about sharing data across organisations that kind of had ad hoc working arrangements, but they are separate institutions in their own right. So on our site we have healthcare, but we also have education. 2 to 3 years ago, we merged with Community Service Wandsworth. So we went from being very site-specific, very acute, large provider, to starting to work in the community. And most people who know healthcare, they're kind of different people working in those organisations, different challenges. On top of that, we've joined into something called the South West London Pathology Integrated Services. So there's 3 hospitals in South West London that are combining pathology services and sharing resources through a portal. Again, dispersed work in different organisations, but they need to share, interact each other, officially, unofficially, ad hoc, structured ways. And we serve a population of 1.3 million across South West London. So, why VDI? Basically, around 2012, we realised we had a desktop management problem. Whether that was people, processes, stupidity, investment, we had a problem managing our desktops. We was benchmarked at the time, and we realised we did more visits than our peers, and we supported more sites. When I moved into this space from the back-end server infrastructure to look at the desktop management, I normally tell this story where I started to go in outpatients clinics. And it wasn't so much the performance of the desktop, it was the inconsistency in the estate. So, I could go into one clinical cubicle and I could see a brand new PC and the experience was perfect. Go to the next room and the experience was terrible because it was an old PC. It was the inconsistency. As an organisation, we also had a high rate of change. Now, I've talked about change previously on a large structural way, the way we integrate with more organisations, but within the hospital itself, the hospital was constantly moving. Wards was moving, clinics was moving, there was just constantly moving across the entire site. And we was deploying more software than our peers. We was deploying about 30% more software, just constant change within the environment. This was kind of a lack of confidence in the infrastructure from the clinicians. And on top of that, we had an aggressive EPR rollout. We was looking to do clinical documentations, e-pharmacy, order comms. And what my CEO was thinking, and what people who was engaged in this clinical program of work, every time they engaged the clinicians, they wouldn't talk about the big ticket items. I was more concerned about the state of the desktop. And what we wanted to do, we just wanted to move the debate on. We wanted to move the conversation on from the infrastructure towards the big ticket items of e-prescribing. So we wanted to make a step change. We wanted to just move the argument on, and at the same time we wanted to introduce mobility, and that's why we chose VDI. Okay, so what do we have? Well, we have something called a medical desktop. Well, sometimes we call it clinical desktop, and it's VMware View, FinApp. We use Improvata, OneSign to link all those applications together, and also for our identity access with our smart card. We use McAfee antivirus, and we plug into an existing file printing solution. We're part of the National Programme of IT. As an organisation, we're very committed to the spying in the NHS for data quality issues. So we use ISOSEC Identity Agent for spying authentication. And our kind of workhorse device of choice is the Prime Fin client, and we use that either wired or wireless in our cows or wells. In terms of the medical desktop architecture, we have a standard architecture. We have 2 clusters. We have one shared image, one gold image. We have 2 instances of that across the 2 clusters. We use our NHS smart card and our PIN to authenticate to the VDI desktop. From the front-end connectivity, we've got hardware load balancers, security servers to access N3, and we link our medical desktop into our VPN solution. We have distributed directory services as well. So, our successes. Well, as we stand at this moment in time, we have 4,000 registered users, about 50% of those active during a week, 2,500 VDI desktops. Should have checked my slides. We have on average about 21,000 single sign-on logons a week. So that's, do the math, 21,000 10-second logons, that's 60 hours saving a week. Our VDI, our medical desktop, is our desktop of choice for clinical rollouts. So at the moment, every clinical application we roll out, we're rolling out EDM document scanning medical records, and that's rolled out on top of VDI. We don't roll out software on anything else, we just deploy VDI and roll the software out on top of VDI. And also we have a solution that's very agile, mobile, and we use it to solve various tactical problems. You know, physiotherapists are going into GP surgeries rather than taking laptops. They're using our VDI solution to tunnel back into the organisation. GPs are private organisations. We don't control the infrastructure. Solves various tactical solutions and better governance. You know, we was failing to manage our desktops. Data was held on local devices. It's all now held in the data centre. Lessons learned. Okay, so collaborate and communicate. We found you need to tell the story, sell the vision. Don't talk to clinicians about the technology. Link the VDI deployment within the clinical programme of work and sell that vision. Measure success. Now, we're all IT guys. We tend to not measure stuff. You know, it's not necessarily our job. We have day jobs. You want to kind of measure what you can measure and just report on your progress and use that information. It's a clinical change program of work, not an infrastructure. So when you're trying to roll it out, play it in with that clinical change program. Use project managers to roll it out. It's not an infrastructure. In some respects, the technology is the simple part. It's making that deep, penetrative change within your organisation. Think about printing at the beginning. You know, we're not paperless yet. People need to print. You just need to think about it. And there's various ways you can solve that solution, but just play it in at the beginning. Think about how VDI affects your existing team structure. You know, it's a change for the organisation, but it's also an internal change for your IT department. There's different roles, it's more collaborative. You need to knock down those walls. Just think about how it's going to affect your teams. Reduce the complexity where possible. So I've already outlined our medical desktop solution. It's complex. You have to manage that. So there's various layers you can add on, environmental management tools, monitoring tools. Think about managing that complexity. Think about where you're going to add that at the beginning, the end, and what value you get from it. Resources for deployment and training. Think about the deployment. So what next? We're an AirWatch customer, so we're looking at AirWatch. We're testing VMware View. we're going to roll out Cerner Internet Access. If anybody's a Cerner deployment site here, I'd be interested to know whether anybody's done that. What we're reflecting upon is the wider deployment. Deploying to our communities. Are we going to continue on-premise? Are we going to host desktops in the cloud? We've reflected on our application strategy. Where our application is going to sit, we've seen a tendency for those applications to be hosted externally now. How is that going to affect our VDI deployment? What's that relationship? Are we going to do more of the same? Tisa touched on it. Do we need more desktops? Do we need more AirWatch, Workspace? What do we need to complete the job? Okay, and with that, I'll hand over to Darren.
Thank you, Justin. My name's Darren Henderson. I'm from South Eastern Trust in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland's split up into 6 if you count the Ambulance Trust, 5 different health trusts, and we're South Eastern Trust, which, not surprisingly, is the southeastern part of Northern Ireland. So, as it says, our southeastern part of Northern Ireland covering a population of 440,000. With 12,000 staff, and about 8,800 of those have regular access to computers and AD accounts and things like that. That's today, that's right today, but that's going to grow as we roll this out across our community side of the house. So the district nurses who typically wouldn't have had a lot of access to kit and logins are now going to have access to that. We deliver kit. This is an important point in Northern Ireland, much like Justin actually. In Northern Ireland, the healthcare service is acute and community, so every trust looks after the community side as well as the hospital. So it's right from the patient's front door right to the hospital on everything in between, and we look after some GPs as well. We have about, and including 3 emergency departments in our trust at the minute until they close a couple of them. We have 120 facilities. That's hospital facilities and community centres and things like that. But now with this spread into the community, and there's a strategy in Northern Ireland called Transforming Your Care, which is about the community as the new acute. They want to treat patients closer to their home. So that's the direction of travel for us. So 120 trust facilities, but actually all of our facilities is right down to the patient's own home. We want to treat them in their house. We've got an electronic care record in Northern Ireland using the Iran portal. It's a regional application across all the trusts, and it just sucks up all the data from all of the clinical specialist systems and presents it in a read-only view for everyone, and that is absolutely tremendous for everyone. But they need access to it wherever they can get it. It's brought a different paradigm in where before healthcare professionals had a little out where they didn't know that there was a blood result done in another hospital another day, but now they have no reason to say that they didn't know it. 5 minutes looking into the ECR, you can see every record in Northern Ireland. We also are looking at Evolve as an EMR, so a medical record, recording information of the tasks within an acute hospital while they're in the ward, the observations that go on, the must assessments and things like that. The things that actually you wouldn't want in your electronic care record, it would just be noise that the rest of the clinicians don't want. So for that spell while they're in, it's to manage that. So that's our 2 main applications, and obviously a host of other specialist applications. So that's our infrastructure. Why we looked at VDI. Our PC estate was actually in quite a good position. Our oldest PCs was 3, maybe 4 years old. Vista, surprisingly, and Windows 7 was the vast majority of the rollout. So we're quite healthy there, so that wasn't the challenge for us. But the challenge for us was the Follow Me desktop thing, especially whenever we needed to go out to the community. People needed mobility, just mobility. And whenever people talked about mobility, they were thinking about the community side, but actually every healthcare professional in a hospital is actually mobile. They move between outpatients to their own office, to the wards, they're mobile and they need access. So Follow Me Desktop has been an aspiration literally for decades. I've worked in healthcare for 25 years. So it's been an aspiration literally for decades, and we've almost got there a few times with other solutions, but this truly is the proper Follow Me Desktop at the speed that we need it. TYC have already touched on it. That was a regional strategy about pushing services out further into the community, the health centres, and ultimately the patient's home, where the patients actually want to be. Obviously, some of the other challenges, Windows. Everyone knows what Windows is like. You know, you roll out a new PC, it's grand for the first 6 months. After that, it starts to go downhill. So that was a bit of a challenge. So even though our estate was relatively fresh, 3 or 4 years old, those 4-year-old PCs were starting to have a little performance issues, and we were doing regular re-imaging. So it was actually an impact on us, not so much on the users. Laptops are even harder to manage. I don't need to tell you. They're offline all the time. Security. Obviously, security is a big challenge, and VDI was going to play to that. But the information just never leaves the data center. The biggest thing for me was ease of use. We needed to provide this, the level of access and the ease of use. We needed to provide it really slickly, because let's face it, not just the new junior doctors actually, but any of the sort of the more hands-on doctors are doing this at home. They're saying, I've got my iPad and my Mac at home and I'm syncing my photographs. Why can't I do that, within here? The consumerization of IT has had a huge impact on us, but it's an opportunity as well. We can use that to try and get some of this technology in. We've been a long-time user of Imprivata single sign-on, but we've been unable, at that stage, we were unable to put it into the emergency departments, because whilst as good as it wasn't quick enough for them. The churn, they're literally looking up blood results on a one device, turning around to triage the patient, coming back, and somebody else is on that device and had to log in somewhere else. So while Imprivata sorted out the applications, it didn't deliver the Follow Me desktop. So we needed both of those for the emergency departments. So our solution, software, we started out 2 years ago with 4.5, and we're now up to 5.3, and we're looking forward to 6. We're currently use application virtualization. It's not ThinApp. We're licensed for ThinApp. We just haven't had the time to look at. We do use AppV just in the interest of being open. But Cloud Volumes, or App Volumes as it should be called it now, is very, very interesting to us for many different reasons, especially the RDSH side of things. We use persona management, and we've been a long-term user of folder redirection, so our documents were already centralized. And we are, as it stands, 100% non-persistent desktops, so there is no persistent desktops in the management overheads that you would get with that. Our hardware, HP C7000 enclosures with BL460 blades, 256 gig of memory, you can read it there. They're not overly big, they're just the half-height blades. The storage, we spent a lot of time around the storage, as you should within VDI. And we tested Tentry, and we're just completely blown away by it, just the ease of use. It's sized currently for 1,200 concurrent users. But that's an interesting stat, actually. Your figures, actually, Martin, was the 1-to-5 ratio. So the number of licenses that we have of 1,200 users actually will do us for about 5,000 actual users, because of the working patterns, if we stay with non-persistent, because it's only used whenever they're logged in. Our end clients, our iPads, Zero clients, and Chromebooks as well now. The iPads was an interesting approach for us, because it's more about, we wanted people to use this, and we didn't want to deliver a new device to them and them not having a negative view on it, and Windows devices, and it's just the same thing again. But people want iPads, let's face it, people love iPads. So by saying, as part of the solution, you're going to get iPads, that really brought on the positive side of it. And Zero clients, they're actually companion devices, so if you get an iPad, you get a Zero client for your office. And the Chromebooks is to fill in that missing gap between a full laptop with a keyboard and all the management overhead of that, and an iPad where if you're going to consume a lot of data, an iPad's fantastic. If you're going to generate a lot of data, maybe an iPad isn't just the perfect device. So the Chromebooks are playing towards that. But effectively, it's any device anywhere. We call the project, we don't call it, what's the official EUC term for always on point of care. It was a little bit of a words. We call it My Desktop. That's our solution. It's called My Desktop, and that's to get the ownership for the users. As I say, single sign-on, a long-term user of Imprivata OneSign, and that, I see a partner in the background. I had a discussion with him last year about this. That is the secret sauce of this. That ties a lot of this together. We use proximity passes for car park access and managed print access, and it's the same pass to log into this. And that was the key to get it into ED. So the users don't even have to type a username and password, they just swipe their badge and they're in. And MDM, again, because we were using iPads, we needed some sort of MDM solution, and we've been a long-term user of AirWatch as well. And we're just this year moving away from BlackBerry onto iPhones as the smartphone of choice. So what's the impact been? The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. We've had no naysayers at all in it. Our first pilot users, we chose some, obviously, as you do, some friendly customers, some doctors are interested in it, but we also, well, I think this was the power of it, we also chose some negative customers, doctors who typically have been very negative towards IT, saying, you know, you're forcing things on us. We brought them on board and dragged them along initially, and now they're advocates for the solution, so that's been a real key for us. And Follow Me Desktop, vital in creating a much more efficient clinical experience, obviously. I mean, that's why we do it. We shouldn't be doing anything in IT unless it helps the clinician, help the patient. And that's what a colleague of mine, Stephen Powell, his mantra is, we're here to help people. And that's exactly what this does. A quick anecdote about that. Dr. Harper, Roy Harper, he's an endocrinologist in our trust. He was at home. He was one of the early pilot users, and this happened while he was on the pilot. He was at home, not working, obviously, at home. He took a call from a mother of a young lad who was attending ED, who had an accident, was attending ED, worried about his treatment. What he was able to do, and he wouldn't have been able to do this before, is while he was on the phone, he grabbed his iPad and with one hand, signed in while he's, yes, I'm listening to you, looked up an ECR, an IPAX image, so a full radiology image, had a quick look at it, and while he was talking on there, was able to send some tasks to the ward to say whenever this patient comes back, this is what the changes are, all while he was on the phone, within 3 minutes. And that's very powerful, and that's while he was at home on his own broadband, So that is fantastic, whereas before he would have been booting up a laptop, getting through the encryption, getting onto the VPN, it just wouldn't have happened. It was effectively impossible. And that's all very good for the users, but it has to be something for IT as well. I mean, that's face of it. Don't do this to give ourselves work. Our initial view was we didn't go into this to try and save money. A lot of people said to us, and a lot of financial people said, well, you're not going to replace the PCs, you're not going to do this. We're saying, no, you're going to replace them with zero clients, and they will last longer, but you're going to have to invest at the back end and the people. So we didn't go into this to save money. I fully expect this will save money in the fullness of time, but there is a hump cost at the start in the investment, so yeah, absolutely have to do that. And now the zero client rollout is just a trivial task. We go in, we take people's laptops and computers off them, we give them a zero client on their desk. It's minutes to roll it out. So, success, buy-in from the clinicians, including the negative ones. We work with some great partners. BT and IT Alliance worked well with us to set up the infrastructure to start to scale. But an important point was we didn't bring them in and they didn't set it up for us. We set it up with their help, so we wanted to learn, we wanted to own it. Simplification, Justin also mentioned that about reducing complexity. And that's why we went with Tintry and went with some other solutions. We wanted to reduce the complexity, so it makes it easy for us to look after. And the images we want to keep as close to the physical side of the house as possible, so it's the same experience if you're on a physical one, if you're on a virtual one, albeit it's much faster. So I'm saying ultra notebook performance, why we chose Tintry. The reconnect times on average is 2.5 seconds, so from the tap and the badge onto your desktop is 2.5 seconds. The initial login, obviously, while it's loading the profile, is about 20 seconds. We've tried, wherever possible, to avoid bespoke solutions. We've tried to use industry standard things and new players like Tintry and so on. However, ED, there was a bit of a challenge there, and we had to do a little bit of a bespoke thing. Listen, single sign-on is absolutely fantastic, but it brings a challenge, and it's called keys of the kingdom. If somebody gets in, tailgates you, you walk away from your desktop, and somebody walks up behind you and uses that desktop, they have the keys to your kingdom. They can do whatever you want, and that's the downside of single sign-on. So we have to try and avoid that where possible. So within ED, we've got a 40-second inactivity timeout. So if you haven't used the desktop in 40 seconds, bang, you're kicked out. Now that sounds really overdramatic, and I think that's globally the smallest number Imprivata have seen, but the users asked for that because they are now saying, actually, hang on, I don't want somebody looking at my stuff. And another smart thing I think we did there is we actually single sign-on enabled the HR application. So not only could they see the clinical information, that doctor had access to. They could see the HR information about that doctor. So they absolutely didn't want anyone in there. So that's really driven the ownership of that and making sure that they tap out, or if they walk away, it's a 40-second. But obviously, when those doctors go back to their office, 40 seconds is just untenable. But as it stands today, there is no solution to have multi-times, depending on what location. But we work with Imprivata and developed a bespoke solution for that, and that's in work today, and that's going to be integrated into the product as we go forward. If we were doing it again, I think we were overly cautious. You know, it's taken us 2 years to get to where we are today. I think, you know, with some more resource, we could have been a lot more aggressive with this, because the title of this is, you know, solutions that the physicians are looking for. We've got people literally banging on the door saying, give us this. And obviously now with the hyper-converged solutions, it would be even easier, the likes of EvoRail and so on. So it's been fantastic. What's next? Workspace, a further enabler for BYOD. If it's any device anywhere, why not use the user's own devices? And Workspace really plays for that. So if they happen to have a Mac or an Android tablet, then just to deliver the applications from there. Cloud Volumes looks fantastic, as does Project Fargo, in terms of getting the spin up of the desktops as quick as possible. And hardware 3D, we're going to look at that, so getting some NVIDIA cards for some servers. But it's a small use case for us. Really, all just already use this for on-call. The 3D modeling works in software, but you know, it's not fantastic, but they absolutely love it. But we would just like to give them that little bit extra. So that's what we're going to do next. That's me.
Hi everybody, I'm Martin Powis. I'm an enterprise architect for the Yorkshire and Humber Commissioning Support Service within the NHS. We're an internal provider of services to the NHS, a government-created whim, some might say, in terms of creating competition within the NHS to drive efficiencies, but also looking at delivering services at scale. So 2 years ago, previously, I was a head of IT for just a citywide service, delivering service to primary care. So we've made a bit of a shift change in where we are. So doing this 2 years ago, I was just, like these two guys, just concentrating solely in their own area. So I'm now moving into a new world whereby I'm sales, I'm an architect, and we're trying to look at solutions to fit a lot of customer requirements. So we sort of sit in a space whereby predominantly we service primary care within the NHS, so GP practices, community health services, and other qualified providers within primary care. We do also touch on hospitals, but that's mainly primary care clinicians moving into hospitals, and where we're providing tertiary services to those users. Our current sort of footprint at the moment is we cover the whole of Yorkshire and Humber within the UK. So approximately 15,000 square kilometres, I've been told, is our geographical footprint, with 33,000 users across that user base. So we do have challenges in terms of just our current core user base as to how we're going to support those. We're moving into a space where, as I say, as an internal service provider, we've also got to look at how we provide services to other users across the country, and all of the challenges that come with that. So one of the issues we're going to have is that we'll also have other internal service providers within the NHS that will be competing against our services. So we've got to have a strong story as to where we're going as a service provider. And with all of that, we've also got a myriad of different systems. So before we would be looking at one or two systems within a local area, we've got clinical systems, medical device systems that are connecting to users' desktops across all of those users. So going back 2 years, as I say, looking at where we were in Bradford, the city in Yorkshire, before the change we were making, we basically, looking at our desktop estate, we've been working around on VDI since 2006. So we were very, very early adopters in the technology, and we did a lot of work, watched the marketplace grow. and looked at all of the issues that we had to deliver virtual desktops. And it was a long journey, and a lot of that was the industry wasn't ready for virtual desktops. Definitely the hardware industry, some of the software industry, the storage industry, they weren't there. So we had to do a lot of work and understand the technologies before we even embarked on giving that to the users. And that was a really useful learning experience from that point of view. Given that time that we were looking, we made a conscious decision not to start changing any desktop estate. So our PC replacement strategy went on hold for about 4 years, and it left some really annoyed users. But we were quite committed to our vision, and we ended up with best part of 5,000 desktops that were end of life or pretty much died completely to replace. So from that point of view, VDI for us at that time was the right choice. We'd sort of created the right choice, but yeah, we were going to have to replace 5,000 desktops anyway. So our vision around virtual desktops was, well, if we're going to replace 5,000 desktops, they could become terminals. Give everybody a virtual desktop. That's great. So obviously, all of the drivers that everybody's talked about around virtual desktops is obviously reducing complexity, get consistency. That has been the key thing, especially in primary care. We've got GP practices, I think Justin brought that up in terms of obviously being private businesses within their own right. They're obviously wanting to do things, but we also want to do things for themselves, but we've got to obviously provide regulatory compliance to those desktops. So we're still governed by the NHS, and those guys are still governed by the NHS. So we need to make sure we're consistent. And looking at how we used to manage desktops in the past, that was very, very hard. Everybody's still in a position of giving admin rights to standard users because software doesn't necessarily work if they haven't. So that was always very, very hard. So bringing that into a virtual desktop at least meant that even if somebody was playing around with a desktop, it was going to be, next time they rebooted that, it was going to be clean, consistent, and off they go again. So again, one of the things we'd always had within the Bradford area was we'd had a wide area network for 15 years. We had a large scale wide area network. So a lot of our users were very, very used to moving between sites, using roaming desktops, but using their Active Directory login wherever they were. And that was really beneficial to a lot of clinicians. They didn't have Follow Me Desktop in the new sense, but they did have the ability to roam around, and obviously it wasn't a case of a new login for every site they went to. So obviously Virtual Desktop was a natural extension to that, to basically give them the same consistent login, but also give them that follow me desktop, which was always on. So in terms of if they didn't want to log out, then they could just do a reconnect at any site across the district. So again, in terms of looking, that, again over those 15 years, we'd worked heavily on imaging technologies. So the ghosting of machines across a wide area network, was what we'd always done. So again, it was second nature to us in terms of just being able to flip into a VDI world and actually looking at how do we manage those images, how do we give people that consistent experience. So it was all a logical choice for us to move to VDI at the time. And obviously, we know obviously the biggest selling points is centralising that data, centralising the security and resilience of all of those users' desktops and data. As I say, we because we jumped into the market early doors, we did have a wealth of experience to draw on in terms of understanding some of the older type of broker technologies, the Lear streams of the world. We were watching those and actually working with the likes of Citrix, VMware, and Microsoft to actually understand where the market was going. So we were very, very confident in our approach. So as I say, the biggest challenges really for moving forward was it was a long, hard struggle back in 2006 to find anybody. Hardware manufacturers really were where's the world going with this virtualization thing? Even from a server point of view, I think there was a lot of sort of change going. But definitely from a desktop point of view, we struggled to find what was, putting my neck on the line as a design, what was I going to sign off and that was going to work then for a five-year plan. So that was really, really hard work at the time. As I said, speaking to people, no real grasp of where desktop virtualization was going. 2006, the government, the department that runs smart cards for the government, not even investigated virtual desktops themselves. So we had to work with those guys and Microsoft and VMware to actually make sure adoption of smart cards could be introduced to virtual desktops. So we were, very, very bleeding edge on those type of things. And obviously, convincing the board around the savings was a challenge. And one of the biggest things we've had was the perception from users that they were going to lose something. They had their physical device, and it was a case of, you're going to take that away from me. That's mine. That's that's always been my PC. So what are you doing to me? And that was a big perception to break, really. And again, internal stuff. Everything's moving to the cloud. I'm going to reduce. I don't need as many staff. So that was a big thing. For us to get through to the IT staff. But again, that was a case of, well, actually, we'll just upskill you. We'll give you more interesting work to do, because actually, as we're centralising, there's no reduction in staff. It's actually just more quality we want to drive anyway. So we as I say, we replaced 5,000 PCs en masse, and we put in Wise terminals at the time. Those Wise terminals initially were running Windows embedded. Main reason for that was there was a number of legacy applications that would not virtualize too well. So we threw in there Virtual Desktop Extender from Res Software, which allowed us to fool users into believing that all of their applications were virtualized. But that gave us a stepping stone just to make sure that, again, similar to these two guys, we didn't break what the user originally had. It had the same look and feel, and so we didn't have any criticism of that. We've moved away from that now, and 100% of our applications are virtualized. So even the ones we had over the bridging period using RDX, they've now been adopted as 100% virtual applications. So obviously, Horizon View, using ThinApp extensively, so over 50% of our applications are ThinApp delivered. And Persona, when we delivered 2 years ago, the first set of desktops with just the latest version of View had just been delivered. Persona was there, and it was great timing for us, because we were looking at products from the likes of App10s and trying to justify how do we spend that kind of money on moving forward with true speed of login technologies, and Persona came at the right time for us. We were still at a stage even 2 years ago very, very concerned that we wouldn't have something that was ready for the future. So we did a belt and braces design, and actually sort of made a bit of a jump into sort of where converged technology is going at the moment. So we built rack mount servers with Fusion IO directly into those servers to give us a definite quality of experience from IO, and basically something that wasn't going to break. That was costly at the time, but it was still cost justifiable to the board. But it was one of those things whereby we just definitely didn't want anything to break at that time. And obviously from that point of view, looking at the show today and looking at the Solutions Exchange, looking at converged technologies coming along, it's really, really good to see that we made a good choice there. The other thing, as a success from our point of view, we built a dedicated team around virtual desktops to not only do the technology, but also do the promotion around visiting users and those sites. And so, as I say, running that now successfully for 2 years. We've got users actually now across the country. So actually as far south as Kent, running from data centres in Yorkshire. Actually, a couple of international users running the service, and over internet, 3G, 4G type services. We built an internal two-factor authentication system to connect those users in. But we were quite cautious when we actually rolled the service out. We wanted to make sure it was a consistent approach to just delivering the original desktops. So we didn't switch the security servers on for a year, just to make sure everything was right. But since we've done that, we've adopted users bringing their own device and basically, let the users run free with those devices. So the impact from the clinicians is obviously we've got a lot of home working going on now. GPs working in other areas that they traditionally used to need to see patients in, so nursing and care homes, but actually now being able to go in with their iPad, their laptop, even a PC within that nursing home and grabbing their desktop. So some of those are grabbing their desktops on a HTML5 desktop experience, but it doesn't need to be anything sexy. They just need to get on and see the information. So where they can obviously fire up a session at a nursing home, that's great for them. We've actually, as I say, we rolled out the desktops through the security servers, and we had GPs coming back. This is great. I downloaded the View client onto my iPhone, and I'm seeing patients with my iPhone in their own homes. You're doing what? But they genuinely just got the technology, and then they started using it. And so, yeah, fine, if you want to use your iPhone. Same doctor called me last week. I've just upgraded to my iPhone 6 Plus, and I can now obviously see it a little bit better, but it's still great. And that was fantastic. Obviously, looking at a wide area network deployment, initially, 20-minute logons were not uncommon for users, and it was a case of coming to the consulting room in the morning, log on, go make a coffee, even have a bacon butty maybe, and then get back to the desktop and log on. That's now gone down to less than a minute, even with the Windows embedded boot, and straight into log on to the desktop. Impact on support, obviously the majority of service issues we have now are resolved at first line. Obviously, the standard Windows mess is gone. Obviously, it's just a reboot of a desktop. What's really good, and obviously it was the mantra when we started off, is remote visits by the field technicians. That's over 75% reduction in those visits, which is, for a geographical area the size of Yorkshire and Humber, is a great story. If we can reduce that 75%, across that area, that's going to be great. One of the biggest things we found was that our help desk calls didn't actually reduce when we delivered virtual desktop. Not because we'd got the technology wrong, because actually we'd reduced the calls, and people actually felt more confident in ringing the service desk up about, can I just ask you a question about how do I do this in Word or Excel or various things like that. And that was surprising to us. We didn't make anybody redundant as part of virtual desktop rollout, which is good because the number of calls just didn't decrease. But the quality and the consistency of our desktop, of our service team now, to be able to answer those calls, is measurable, from user experience. And as I say, the perception of support now is much better, given all of that. The success, I think, was that it was years of planning. I think now it's an easier thing because there's people like myself and these guys having delivered at scale solutions. We can talk to people and actually be assured of success a lot quicker. But we did spend a lot of time getting that right. Working with partners, directly with VMware, and some of the VMware partners was a key to success as well. Again, Darren brought that up, and I don't think it can be lost. There are so many pitfalls you need to consider, and you don't know all of the answers yourself. So that was really, really vital for us. And the biggest thing again was talking to the users, doing roadshows before we even deployed, ensuring they knew what was going on. Actually running roadshows. Multiple roadshows, and then finally, just before we delivered, was a launch event, and that was really important. And again, it was a case of, there's a virtual desktop, we're going to deliver to you. And so the reaction we got was, well, yeah, it's just Windows. So that was, in some respects, it was a success because actually what we'd given them was exactly what they needed, and it was exactly the same. So we wouldn't, there was no smoke and mirrors there from that point of view. Biggest thing is, what would we do different if we did again? We made lots and lots of changes. So we centralised everybody's data, moved them to Windows 7 as we were doing virtual desktop, giving them new terminals and all those kind of things. So I think the key was probably simplify the deployment from our point of view. So what's next from our point of view? I think Horizon Workspace and streamed apps is definitely coming for us. There's a number of cases whereby we don't need to have desktop application interaction, and there are a number of applications we can stream, and we've started doing some testing on that already. Obviously, latest with VU6 is obviously the ability to do some good stuff around multi-data centre resilience, and obviously at scale as we move to providing large-scale services. That's really important to us. Again, looking at the near-zero clients, always a bit concerned about zero clients. But I think we've now got around that Windows embedded reliance now. We're in the process of upgrading to View 6 at the moment, and as I said before earlier in the presentation, I think converged technologies is our next step change. Definitely for reducing the cost and the continuity of our service. That's it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. That was fantastic information. And now we have a few minutes to take some questions from the audience. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. We have a microphone that will come to you. Mark.
It's Aidan Coyne from Triangle, so I know some of these guys already. I'd just be interested in if any of you guys are looking at vSAN and what that might do in the VDI space, because obviously a lot of what you talked about is hardware performance, storage performance particularly, so I'd be just interested in getting that feedback.
Yeah, we on there? Yeah, are we on? Yeah, we're looking at that, especially with our experience around Fusion IO. Obviously, reducing the costs is one thing. We're obviously looking at some of the other providers out there, Nutanix and those kind of guys with their vSAN type of story. It's really great for us actually to be able to have a running system that is all the bells and whistles, belts and braces, to actually put those technologies alongside to actually see how because obviously vSAN is great. There's obviously some questions that have to be asked around that, but yeah, definitely I think that's one of the areas that we sort of see that will reduce costs.
Anyone else?
For our deployment, it's not so much, we're Extreme IO at the moment for storage. It's not so much about whether you're looking at vSAN, it's kind of an interesting argument, but it's more kind of looking about how are we going to provide the next phase of desktops ourselves, or are we going to manage them out of a data center that's co-hosted as a service? Those are the kind of challenges we're looking into.
For us, vSAN was an interesting technology, absolutely, but we felt it was a little bit early in the curve for it, so we went with, I was going to almost say established, going with Tintri. It was still relatively new, but we felt comfortable with that. But now with Evo Rail, it's becoming compelling to look at the devices like that will utilize EvoSAN. Or vSAN. It will lower the cost, absolutely, per desktop, so why wouldn't you look at it?
Hi guys. I see massive interest across the whole of healthcare around VDI for all of the reasons that you stated. But one of the issues I regularly see is the inability to really get a solid business case to do the kind of scale that you guys are talking about. Could you provide us some insight into the business cases that you put forward and how you did it, and obviously got the investment to do this?
Well, there might have been different approaches for the business case. We went into it, we did a small pilot, so we said we'll buy a 120 user license. So relatively small money to do it. Use the servers that we had, use the SAN that we had, because we knew we weren't going to be hitting it too hard. And we got the positive clinicians on board, and we got the negative clinicians on board. So at that stage, that was the stories, the customer stories coming back to us, and that provided us the ammunition to go out to seek the money to do it properly. But we didn't go into it to say this is going to be cheaper long term. We said it's going to be break even at best. But the delivery of the experience is what we're delivering, not trying to save money.
You're right, it's a question that's asked quite a lot, and there's a few emails in my inbox already asking the same. It's the same approach. It's cost neutral. We used existing budgets. We flattened the spend over a number of years. We used existing partners, resources, VMware, Prime, Invata, and we just kind of built it, and they will come kind of approach. One of the interesting things I was talking about yesterday on this subject is we talk about the hardware savings, the savings within IT, but as we realise, if we're going to make those 20 billion savings in the next 5 years, it's going to be front-end clinical process savings. So it's about, and I was talking about this yesterday, you know, how can I mine my Invata data to help build that case? How can I measure it? How can I actually say we've made these clinical savings? And that's really difficult. But, you know, if you can do that and show that realistically, and I think that's your business case there.
Yeah, and I think just to mirror those two comments, really, I think it was a cost-neutral approach. I think the proof of concept at scale, 600 users within the HQ for us was a case of, you know, actually you can deliver what you said you were going to deliver virtually. Therefore, if the cost neutral, then why not do that? I think what we didn't do as a business case is actually trying to build in any kind of cost savings around staff or travel and those kind of areas. But now we can confidently do that and actually sort of move forward from our point of view as a reseller of services. That's obviously going to be an important story for us going forward.
We may have time for one more question, if anybody else. Yes, sir? Wait 1 second, we got a mic for you.
Yeah, hello. My question is regarding the networking. How was the experience with the network team, and if there was necessary some invest in the network to support the VDI project?
Yeah, from our point of view, the wide area network was obviously important for us. We just upgraded to fairly beefy links over the time, which for us was again it was a non-issue in terms of those networks. We did, however, see that we do a lot of data scanning, so we still scan records from remote sites. So that was a challenge in the early days, looking at virtual desktops, and that was something that we didn't really appreciate. We've actually now got some of those technologies running over slower links, and some of the improvements around PC over IP has definitely seen a big reduction in our wide area network costs.
Yeah, so our first VDI deployment was on-premise. We didn't go to community, we stayed on-premise. And the first business case was part of a network upgrade, so we did the network upgrade at the same time with the VDI. But you're right, that, you know, people forget about the networking. It's kind of, you know, that's really important, you need to look at that. And I guess when we talked about merging those teams together, I guess the desktop, the systems is quite easy, but there seems to be a bigger wall with the network team in most organisations. That's a big challenge. Because we didn't go to community, so one of the concerns we have about, you know, what are the challenges going to be when we start rolling out in community and facing the challenges that they're doing in Bradford.
From the user side, it's much like the guys here. We had an upgrade coming for all of our links. We used to have 20-minute logons at locations. Well, that wasn't uncommon for us as well, but moving to VDI helped that. But the links are now all upgraded, so that there's no issue with the performance at that side. But you're at the data center side, there you have to be very careful how you design this so that you can scale it and design it right. And we spent a bit of time with the partner designing that, but it's not overly complex. It's not complex at all.
Great. Well, I just want to thank everybody very much for attending today, and I would encourage you to fill out the survey. That way we can continue to improve on the session. And I'd like to thank my panelists very much. Justin, Darren, and Martin, thank you. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us today.